Thank you all for joining us. It's lovely to see you this morning. I guess it should just start by saying it is so thrilling to be doing in-person rehearsals. Like after 15 months, it is just a special feeling. And certainly we challenged ourselves by going for multiple rehearsal rooms simultaneously. But it is really, energizing for the building, and I hope exciting for the cast. Maybe I should just start by sharing a little bit about the piece, if that makes sense, so people understand the context of that, and then I'll ask our amazing cast some questions and open up the floor. Constellations is a piece by Nick Payne. He has had several works at the Don Juan under Josie. Elegy, which Zoe was in, and also Same Deep Water as Me, a comedy that he wrote. So his association with the Don Juan goes back. Constellations was a piece that I originally directed at the Royal Court in 2012. It's an astonishing, beautiful two-hander about a love story between a quantum cosmologist and a beekeeper. And we've that production enjoyed a nice long run in the West End and on Broadway. And we were really excited to revisit it at this moment for a number of reasons. I think, for me personally, it's a play that covers the full spectrum of life. It's about relationships, it's about choice, it's about free will, it's about all the could have beens and might have beens. And I think we've all experienced a few of those this year. And it's a love story that transcends time and space. I'll begin with Zoe and Peter. I'd love to just, did you know the piece? What was your reaction to it when you read it, and what spoke to you about it?
I didn't see it. I don't know why. Did you see it?
I hadn't seen it. I'd read the reviews, which were very good. Kept thinking I should really go and see that, but of course never got around to it. But I think it's but once I read it, I thought it was just an extraordinary play. It was so adult, it was so witty, and it was so imaginative and moving. And to have all that combined in a way that is accessible is wonderful, I think. And two fabulous parts. And also it's a totally, I know this might sound a little dumb, but it's totally theatrical.
Yeah.
Struck me as it couldn't really exist anywhere else. You can't do this. It can't be a film or it might be a novel or something, but it totally exists in the theatre. That's where it's at its best. So that was delightful, I think. And also Zoe was doing it, so I knew it was right fun.
You thought you'd have some fun.
Yeah.
Amazing. Sheila and Ivano, perhaps you can share your reactions to the piece. And maybe I'll start with Sheila and what it's like to begin to rehearse a quantum cosmologist.
It's a lot. She's a fun quantum cosmologist, so that helps. I've like always loved science anyway, so I was really excited to be able to do a play that has that in it as an element, but also isn't just about science. I think Nick's managed to weave it into the story so brilliantly. And it's quite a tricky thing, I think, to get a sort of specialist subject. Well, he's got two, actually. He's got science and then he's got the beekeeping. To get these kind of specialist subjects and weave it into something that still feels very domestic and very sort of everyday. And like Peter said, the play's really funny as well. It's really witty. The characters are great and interesting. And so it's I don't know. He's managed to like merge all of these things together, and it's really compelling. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to play.
Amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
Did anyone from the cast want to have a go at explaining the form of the play, to share what that is?
Go on.
So we sort of meet this couple on their first meeting at a friend's barbecue and chart the course of going on the first date, their relationship, and I think we span over about 5 years. Seeing the nuance, seeing all of the versions that our individual decisions make on a relationship with another person have, and we get the pleasure of seeing this kind of played out through the multiverse.
And what is the multiverse?
Well, I mean, I am no specialist on alternate
Don't know why you're looking at me.
alternate
I don't know why
presence.
you're
I mean, I'll probably defer to the scientist on my left. But I don't know, the idea that there are millions of other versions of yourself living in alternate realities, experiencing untold experience. Yeah, basically the same person living a million times in different universes.
Yeah, this was. I just jump in to add that Nick essentially fell down a YouTube hole of a science documentary in about 2012 and got obsessed with this branch of science, which he learnt, as the Mariannes in the play will be able to tell us, is a theory of maths that bridges quantum mechanics and relativity. And essentially, science had been, mathematicians had been pursuing answers, you know, to how the world works and the maths that governs it. And they had done that at the large scale, covering gravity, the sun, the planets, and they had done that with a different set of maths at the small scale, which is about quarks, atoms, and molecules and atoms. But the maths breaks down in the middle when you try and measure very heavy small things. And one very heavy small thing is the black holes and the Big Bang and the history of the universe. And so scientists discovered string theory, which is the type of maths that blends the two. And one of the consequences of string theory is the idea that there must be multiple dimensions. And in these multiple dimensions exist everything that has ever and never happened. So Nick's play is a representation of that. And so we get to see sort of iterations. It's like sliding doors times infinity, I would say. And I know he wrote it in a sort of a love of being in rehearsals as the young playwright and watching actors play with a scene over and over again and find different nuance in it and work out how they wanted to, how their intentions and how the given circumstances of that scene would manifest if you tweaked and adjusted them. And so this play writes this theory large. And so the experience of the audience is sort of quite a dizzying, quite dazzling sort of journey through a parallel universe after parallel universe after parallel universe, which for the actors is quite a challenge. Yes, I mean, what's it like to try and rehearse these parallel universes, Zoe?
It's horrible. It's horrible because you never know, unless you, it's so quick, the change in parallel lives, the universes, happens so quickly and it goes backwards as well as forwards. So what I'm having problems with is what happens next. what scenes, because sometimes it well, there's one series of events that happen all the way through, but then it's interspersed into the play at various points. And so, and also we've got to ballroom dance at the same time. So it's been, and I learned sign language, which is fascinating, but it's packed. It's just packed. And so it keeps surprising me every time a scene changes, so that you think, what, where am I? Where am I? Where am I? So, but it's we've sort of been getting slowly there. That I think, don't you?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we get, and
This is
this
is the paperwork here that's necessary to
look
try and
at all
keep
this.
all of this, try and figure out all that. I had to make a whole chart to figure out where we are at one particular point in time. It is to the, it is amazing to understand all of this that I have to write down. Zoe has in her head. I have to write it down to try and keep track of it all, but she goes, oh, and she's figured it out. She knows where we're going and knows how to act it as well. But I think this is all just really, it's garlic to ward off evil spirits. That's what it is. These are also bits of paper with bits. Each scene appears about 5 different times, doesn't it? And there are slight variations in each scene. So I walk around with bits of paper with each of the variations. So if
You're going to bring that out.
I bring it. That's probably what I will do. We need this all on stage.
Okay.
But yes,
And sometimes the scenes are almost identical, aren't they? Like the sort of textual
Yeah.
variations can be really minimal.
Yeah.
But somehow you
the odd
guys
word
found
change.
ways. Yeah, exactly. So a fiendish to learn, but also it's sort of a challenge to sort of work out how such subtle differences can have monumental effects on the scene.
Yeah.
Sheila and Ivano, I was going to ask, what What's been the most challenging thing so far for you in terms of this rehearsal process?
He's talking to you, mate.
No, he's not.
Did you talk to me?
I was going to ask Sheila.
Divana.
Yeah, so
You get to rest, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of moving parts to the like you said. There's the ballroom dancing. There's sign language. There's getting to grips with the structure. There's getting to grips with beekeeping and quantum mechanics, and there's just a lot. There's a lot, and you know, the kind of other aspect of the play to do with sort of health and you know, what happens when somebody becomes ill. There's a lot going on, I think, which is why it's so brilliant, because it doesn't feel like a play that's bloated. You know, it's like, it actually is very economic, probably because the lines repeat over and over again. So actually, if you look at how much he's actually written, it's not that much. But it's very fast. I mean, we tried to sort of stagger it through yesterday, and you just find yourself getting kind of carried along with the momentum of the piece, and you really feel when you stop that it's, you know, that the piece is wanting to go forward. So I'm kind of letting it wash over me actually a little bit.
Yeah.
You know.
And yeah. I mean, and also as the play progresses, as that relationship gets more and more complex, on the turn of a penny, you're kind of following how far these relationships have, you know, what's going on in that household. Is it all roses? Are they in conflict? Are they? And so it's on the turn of a penny, sort of changing all of those circumstances. That's quite interesting to chart after so long indoors and dusting off the theatre.
Yeah, it's an athletic feat for you guys, isn't it? Genuinely, I think there are about 70 possible worlds that you have to jump through, and
yeah, you have to know exactly which world you're jumping into at the point the scene changes. Because if you pitch it wrong, then it's like you're wrong for the rest of the.
Exactly.
You've got to try and crawl it back. And also these little universes, sometimes they only last for a couple of pages, if that. You know, they're not like long scenes that you have the time to kind of, you know, feel your way through or get yourself back on track. You've got to start on track. And yeah, there's been times where we haven't started on track.
And all those costume changes.
All the costume changes.
all those costume changes. I should add to the audience
hairstyles, you know.
Yeah, there are no hats, there are no wigs, there are no glasses, there are no props at all. It's just two actors on a floating empty space, and therefore it's putting a lot on the writing and on these actors to sort of take us on this sort of epic journey across a full relationship. And without getting too spoilery on it, you know, the play really does, I guess, have the full gamut of emotions from the beginnings of love to the end of love, from the start of a relationship to the end of a life. It puts all of it sort of together, and I'm finding it very moving to watch, actually, because having sort of done the play several times before with several different casts before, what was so apparent to me was when you just have two actors on stage and all these different iterations of interactions, is it entirely molds itself to the chemistry of whoever's performing it. So I've already seen it sort of bend a bit in the casting I did historically, and I just thought, actually, there's a real opportunity here in this day and age to say, how wide, how big could the multiverse be, and to really challenge our, certainly my preconceptions of who a beekeeper is and who a quantum cosmologist is, and just take the opportunity, because I think Nick Spade does something rather amazing. It's a love story. I always sort of quote the fact that he wrote this play, he met his wife at the same time as his dad was dying of a terminal illness, and those two sort of massive life events infuse the play totally. But for a love story, it doesn't have children in it. It's entirely about the interaction of two people, and therefore it feels that any two people could play this. And what I wanted to do with this production was celebrate that and really sort of invite audiences to be drawn to different interpretations of the play. And it's amazing how, in some sense, the play is not about aging, or it's not about race, it's not about any of these things, but the lived experience, or it's with Russell and Amari, it's not about, we've got a gay couple playing it as well now. But the casting just infuses the play with different things. Is there anything that each couple could speak to in terms of how they feel their own casting is rubbing up against things in the play, either in a challenging way or a surprising way?
Well, I often find it quite challenging because I think it was written for a man who is much younger than I am. So I sometimes find some of the attitudes that I detect in the character are a little more youthful than what I would pursue. But that said, I'm sort of fascinated by the kind of prism that being older presents to this material when it's viewed through the prism of us. It's a slightly different thing, or without ramming it home or underlining it, it sort of suggests an even longer view than the one that Nick has, in the sense that these organisms that we are, these human beings, are able to, it seems to me, to move through these multiverses and perceive themselves quite accurately as living beings. And I think if you're my age, that means you, in some sense, I feel as if I'm looking back, that the character is looking back into the multiverse and seeing what happened in the past from a position that is arrived at by the end of the play. So that's a different kind of, not that I can ever play that, it's just an idea. It's just something that play does. It's nothing to do with me other than the casting of somebody of my age. It just presents a slightly different view of it. And I think that's fascinating.
It's also, it's not like a Chekhov or anything like that, which has time and space, and you can move into it gently and build on it. This is really quick, and Sheila's absolutely right. You have to be on point as to absolutely from each scene change. So you have to know what the attitude is before it comes as a surprise. So in rehearsals, I find myself going, it's this, oh Christ, it's this scene. So then I think I'm in the wrong place. I'm in the wrong physical place. It doesn't feel right for the next scene. So then everything dries up because I'm still thinking about the scene that I've just screwed up. And I'm just about to screw this next one up as well, because I don't know where I am.
It does have the nice feature that if a universe is going wrong, we can just buzz out of it and try another universe. So, certainly at this stage in rehearsals.
Yeah, well, but why did you choose this particular two-hander?
I mean, I think it's, Nick writes with massive sentiment without being sentimental. I think it's a celebration. I think the effect of seeing every possible world means that you end up sort of really looking at the choices that two people and two actors make in space. So you really sort of go, the decision just to, how they kind of just ever so slightly admonished their scene partner, or ever so slightly flirted with their scene partner, or ever so slightly was kind there, or could have been, it really puts a microscope under our human interactions and how both mundane and massive life events can spiral into different ways at the choice of a word, or how someone handles the person they're talking to. And I think that cumulative effect makes us really aware of how we choose to be in the world moment after moment and what's important. And I find that really moving to watch. So, like, it is literally like the couples are rehearsing life for us, and therefore, I guess. And when I first directed this play, I hadn't had anyone in my life close to me have a serious illness, and so actually the play was sort of allowing me to think about how hard that can be, about how our system, how our health system is frankly unable at times to support that, and how to offer good and compassionate and humane care. It made me think about how powerful a joke is at certain moments of absolute tragedy and heartache, and these things are there for us. And I just think it's a compact 70-minute play that somehow feels like a full life, and because it's nothing but two actors at this time, it feels, as Peter was saying, so theatrical. it's just, you know, we've got used to watching Netflix all year, and we've needed Netflix, and that's been amazing. And, you know, here the jump cut is done by the actor in front of us live. They drop one set of circumstances and they put on another set of circumstances, and we change you know, on a sixpence from, you know, humour to heartbreak. And that is sort of beguiling, I think, for us as an audience, because it sort of, it shows off its sort of inherent fakeness or theatricality, because we go, how can they have been feeling this and then 4 seconds later be feeling that? But the skill of you guys is that I believe that you are feeling that, and therefore it's a rush to watch, I think.
It's a rush to watch.
It's like genuinely, yeah.
I think it's also interesting the way the character is molded by events, you know, and normally in drama we have characters emerging because these big things happen to them, and big things happen in this play. But what is unique about it is tiny things happen. Tiny changes, this reply changes what happens to that reply. And slowly you can see that has an effect on the actual constitution of the personality, so that you can have the same personality. If something different happened in their lives, might be more pleasant or unpleasant, you know, and this play kind of shows that, because we have, without veering too far away from the central core of who these people are, there are slightly different versions of Marianne and Roland, and they have been brought about by tiny little changes.
Absolutely.
Which is what happens in life. Of course, big events, you know, change people, but also, you know, oh, shall I get that train? No, I won't. I'll go. Shall I meet them? No, I won't. You know, that also affects people's lives. So I think that's unique to this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Brilliant. I'm going to put it over to Sheila and Ivano just to speak to what it's like as a black couple to play a play. Does it feel like a white play? Is that something that you're conscious of as you perform it, or yeah, how's that for you?
It's an interesting one. Unfortunately, Roland is an urban beekeeper with an apiary on the roof, so that wasn't that much of an imaginative jump. So it's more so sort of thinking, you know, who am I with that skill? Who am, you know, sort of what, living in the same kind of city, same kind of circumstances, and trying to bring it as, you know, sort of closer to home, as opposed to making such a big imaginary leap. Nothing has really sort of stood out. I think what Nick has is just pretty rigid. You know, it's a sort of structurally vigorous, this play, and I think can be knocked about and stretched and pulled in any which direction. So yeah, I mean, no real dissociation at all, or sort of, yeah, it fits.
That's exciting. Yeah, it is sort of. Sorry, go on, Sheila. You were going to say something.
I was going to say, yeah, there's nothing stark that jumps out as like that's impossible. But I would definitely say that when I read it, I can tell a white person's written it, but not in a way that feels like restrictive or obstructive. And there's still all of the space to sort of imbue it with whatever cultural specificities that we need to. And it's not necessarily huge things, but it can be tiny observations, which, as Peter said, is what this play is kind of all about. But small things, you know, so how would I react to that, having had my life experience as a 30-year-old black woman living in London, as opposed to a 30-year-old white woman living in London, you know, and sometimes it's different and sometimes it's not, and sometimes the difference is bigger and sometimes the difference is smaller. So it's not that it doesn't fit, or that we're having to sort of make it fit in some contrived, uncomfortable way, but it's just illuminating what it brings out, you know, and it's interesting. I mean, we obviously haven't seen Peter and Zoe rehearsing, but it's interesting to see what the choices will be, the differences between the choices that we make as actors, you know, when it comes to what we've decided to kind of go with as our given circumstances for each universe and each scene. I think that's where it gets interesting.
And you do sort of like land upon a couple of stepping stones in the play, wherein it kind of rings out to you politically, and how all the rest, for example, speaking about infidelity in a relationship with a couple of, you know, our generation, and what that means, you know, for Peter and Zoe. You know, there's a line which kind of sort of refers to, you know, you cheat once if you're so, you know, you cheat once and you don't keep on doing it. And that sort of rings out completely, you know, differently for a younger couple trying to start their life, or, you know, sort of a couple who've been together for a while, and it's a problem that keeps on. And I think these sorts of things would probably be what rings out for the audience. And so I think for us, it kind of pretty much stays the same as a format. It's kind of the interpreter to sort of do that mind sweeping and get those delights. So hopefully they watch more than one.
I mean, that was the plan. It needs to be like a, you know, a Nero coffee stamp thing where you get a stamp each time you go and see the cast. So and whoever sees the most versions, you know, gets my huge respect. No, I think it's fascinating for me to watch it because I think, you know, in a play that does have mortality running through it, age becomes very interesting, and experience, and where you are in love, and our expectations of that. And it's sort of it's interesting to hear Peter talk about this feels like a useful thing to do. So are there things that feel immature? Are there things that we forgive a younger couple doing to each other in love, or how they handle things? But then there are moments when absolutely I watch you just recalibrate that and make it a new thing. It's interesting, the notion of privacy feels very different in both rooms, and how a couple give each other space for privacy feels quite different in the two rooms, which is quite interesting. You know, I've been quite careful to sort of leave a firewall between the two rehearsal rooms so that each couple can kind of explore their own version of it and make their choices and feel ownership. But yes, it's something that's it's growing bit by bit, as it were. Yeah.
But not to be sentimental about it, but it is ultimately about love, really. It's really, and that transcends everything.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? I mean, it transcends any age or any, you know.
Yeah.
It's just about how two people love each other in circumstances that become crushing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I watched this.
How they care for each other in this situation, and that doesn't matter who you are, where you are. That's a universal thing.
Absolutely.
It's interesting, but the people who are in this Zoom meeting, I wonder if they'd seen it before.
Yes, throwing it out to the audience.
Yeah. Had anybody else seen it?
I think there were strict manners, muted microphones, and
Absolutely, do share if anyone wants to share any thoughts.
Yeah, be interested. No.
Go for it, Sylvie.
Oh yeah.
Zoe, I have not had the privilege of seeing it, but hearing, I think it was Peter who described it as adult, witty, and imaginative. I simply can't wait. And also, Peter, while I've got the microphone, what happened to your Glaswegian accent?
It's still here, isn't it? Well, I've lived in London most of my life, really. I've realised now.
Me too.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Which accent?
Northern California.
Yeah, well, you still sound pretty Northern California to me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, these guys all think I'm Glasgow. When I go home to Glasgow, I become much thicker and much more Glaswegian. But yeah, it's just living in London for all these years. They don't understand you unless you have to speak more slowly, more careful.
Yeah.
So it's still here.
Amazing. Sylvie, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah. Can I ask a silly question? I know how challenging it must be for Michael to run from one room to the other, but to the two couples you are, do you sneak sometimes to go and see what the other couple is doing and rehearsing, or you don't?
No, of course not. No.
No, we're very good, aren't we? Also under the guise of COVID safety as well. We're being very good at keeping everyone in their bubbles.
Yeah, we're not actually in the same building, so we can't we can't really go and see each other. However, I am conflicted, but I would love to go and see these guys and watch them do their thing. But I'm frightened because they'll be so good, and I'll be really intimidated there. And also, they'll have really good ideas. I will subconsciously steal their ideas.
I'm gonna try and see you guys towards the end, so that there's nothing I can do about it, even if I do. Do you know what I mean?
Well, maybe that'll do.
If I do see something I want, I'm like, well, there's only one show left.
Yeah. A final matinee switch over. Any more questions from the audience?
I had a point of view.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I saw the play when I knew very little about quantum mechanics and space-time, but I saw it when it opened at the Court, and I fell in love with the play. And I'm quite delighted that you're going to produce this.
Amazing.
But in the meantime, after the Court, I got very involved with quantum mechanics and space-time, and Carlo Rovelli, the physicist. And I read all Carlo's books. And I find I always understand the first 50%, and I don't understand the second 50% of any one of his books because they lose me. But I think we shouldn't stress that this is a complicated play, because it's complicated for the actors to perform, but for the audience, with a little understanding of very simple concept of parallel universes, it's fantastic. Can't wait to see it.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I think Nick has done something extraordinary to make potentially very complex maths feel very accessible, because somehow the form and the content perfectly reveal each other. And therefore, yes, you don't need more than the program note that you'll get when you arrive. So I would stress that for the audience.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think that's a great point, because we do get obsessed when we're talking about the complications of it, but it's actually, I think, very simple to understand, to view, to watch. So I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah, it's boy meets girl, or in this case, or sometimes boy meets boy, or girl meets boy, or girl meets boy, girl meets boy, over and over again, and off it spirals in, ad infinitum.
It was interesting because Nick's play Elegy has another kind of scientific theme, which was, but still, it's really about a relationship, which is about love or not, and it's a kind of thing that he gets fascinated by, but he then puts it into such a little. He reduces it to it's still full, but there's this little quite all these questions from about science, which is and for a numeric dyslexic, it's pretty challenging.
You hide it very impressively, but I think that's true. I think Nick does, and Nick absolutely isn't a scientist himself. So in writing the play, he'd met a beekeeper and got very interested in colony collapse, and then he'd watched. It was the Boxing Day after his father had died. He started watching this documentary on multiverse, and I think had found the idea both very beautiful as a way of imagining there are universes out there, worlds out there where him and his father were still alive and still together, and then found the idea quite haunting, almost cruel, because I can't get to those worlds. That I'm in this world, and what does it mean that there might be other theoretical universes that I have no way of accessing? So I think he found the idea both beguiling and challenging, but it was certainly, I think it's that thing, how you deal with grief and how you process it, an idea that stayed very close to him as he was working through these things in his life and came out in the play. But I think he does love science as a way to ask the big questions. I mean, science is saying, who are we, how do we live? And drama is trying to say, who are we, how do we live? And somehow taking the form of one to give shape to the other, it's been very, very, very rich for Nick. And yeah, it was thrilling to see you in Elegy. And then when I knew I was doing this project, though, it became very immediately obvious to me who should be returning to a Nick Payne work. And so that was exciting for me.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
and Penny as well, who says she saw the 2012 version twice. So hopefully you come and see ours as well.
Do. Come and see it again. The multiverse will surprise you and delight you all over. Thank you all for joining us. Big love to the cast. It's really nice to have both casts in a shared virtual space, and just to sort of, it gets me very excited about this thing we're doing, and hopefully the possibilities for plays going forward, and what I don't know, the things that have got me through this year is when COVID has forced us to do things that help us make better art. So rather than feeling that we're compromised, feeling that we've been challenged and discovered something. And this model has allowed me to have 8 of the finest actors in several rooms, which I never would have been able to achieve in normal times. And it might frazzle us all to get there, but I can truly say it's a play that I've seen hundreds of times is feeling fresh and beautiful already. These guys are wonders. So I'm excited to go back into the rehearsal with them now, and I wish you all the most wonderful day. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.